Welcome. Today, we'll take a look at how you can get started with website personalization. We'll cover examples of how you can start small and implement quick wins for your business, as well as focusing on the different stages of building a personalization plan. Whether you're a seasoned marketer or a content professional, this webinar will help you navigate the complexities of website personalization with ease, enabling you to enhance the customer's experiences and drive meaningful results. I'm Mary Claire Russell, Global Head of Field Marketing here at Squiz, and I'm your presenter for the next 45 minutes. I'll be sharing some learnings both of our marketing team's decades of professional experience as digital marketers and through Squiz's learnings working with organisations like yours for over 25 years. We hope to arm you with practical pathways that help you buck the trends that face professionals like yourself. So let's get on with it. Joining me today to answer your questions are Julie Brettle, Chief Product Officer, and Lucy Morgan, Creative and Consulting Lead here at Squiz. Julie and her team are behind Squiz's DXP, working tirelessly to build the right solutions for our customers. Lucy and her team work with clients to understand problems in user experiences that lead to the creation of awesome solutions. Now, let's go through some housekeeping. This webinar is being recorded and you'll receive a copy via email within the next day. If you have any technical difficulties during our session, you can use the chat window on your right-hand side of your screen. Please submit any questions to Ask a Question bar located under the chat window at any time during your session. Julie and Lucy will be answering questions at the end of the session. So let's delve into our topic. To kick us off, let's take a look at this comic strip. It's an example of extreme personalization where Santa has predicted what the person wants for Christmas. I'm not sure how well it would go down with my kids if they couldn't request the present they wanted, but it would certainly make it easier for any parents out there. So why are we all here today? It's to talk about web personalization. So what is it? In a nutshell, it's the process of creating customized experiences for visitors to a website. Website personalization allows organizations to build unique experiences tailored to customers' individual needs and preferences. So let's talk about something that not many people address. What your peers have told us is that digital in practice is tremendously hard. We've all been conditioned to the idea that buying a piece of tech would solve all our problems. You'll pitch seamless experiences and the ability to maximize potential. But when you actually get to use the tech or try to experience the benefits they promise, most of the time you don't get there, leading to incredible frustration for you and your teams and your users. We don't operate in a perfect bubble. Fragmented systems, lean teams and resources, and competing priorities are part of why this journey can be difficult. One of the reasons why there is an aspiration gap is because a lot of tech out there is actually built for retail and e-commerce use cases that are not you. This audience has a much more complex organizational structure and is service-driven, has lean teams and budgets. If we take a look at personalization, it's no different. Most of us here have experienced at least one of these very common challenges. Misconception of ease of implementation, tackling too much at once, almost making it impossible to implement. Lack of real ownership or alignment across the teams needed to launch and manage personalization. Underestimating the content creation and management workload. Being too driven by organizational goals or internal structures that the user needs, and then not having an achievable iterative plan versus big bang. But even though it's hard, you shouldn't need to give up and avoid it. The winners are the ones who get it going regardless of the gap. And we want that level playing field so you can make it work for your organization. You can buck the trend. So what do you do about it? We believe you don't have to trade off big thinking and getting it done. We won't make you look to the Amazons and Netflix of the world. We'll take you through an approach that's more relevant for organizations like yours. Start small, get in market quickly, and learn fast. There are 6 steps to getting personalization done in a very practical way. Define user segments, define personalization goals, map user journeys, set triggers, select content, and measure results. There are 2 experiences that I'll be referencing throughout today's webinar to help you string the recommendations of each step together. The first one is an undergraduate experience for a student looking to enrol in a university. The second is a citizen going to the council's website to pay a parking fine and check on their waste collection. When defining user segments, you want to understand your target audience needs with user data. This isn't anything new, but what we'll talk about is why you should move away from personas to drive this. Instead, we'll talk about utilising the jobs to be done framework. And finally, we'll demonstrate how you can group users into common segments based on their job to be done as your primary criteria. Let's put this into practice. Jobs to be done can be used to group users based on shared jobs as the primary criteria. Other demographic factors can supplement the segmentation to refine it further, where it makes sense. Say you're looking to create an optimal experience for your prospective students. In this very high-level example, the job to be done is to apply for admission to their chosen undergraduate program. But the users could belong to two different user segments, differentiated by demographics. A US resident high school graduate or an international student studying an equivalent qualification in their own country. This could affect the content that's relevant to them and the actions they should take around admissions. You could decide to break down the jobs to be done into a more granular detail once you get familiar with the jobs to be done framework. You may think you want to go with a persona approach. All of us have used or developed personas, right? But we know it can have its flaws. Let me give you an example of how using personas can present its own challenges. User 1 is male. He's born in 1948, married twice, lives in a castle, and is wealthy and famous. It's none other than King Charles III. Now, let me show you another member of royalty that does meet this criteria. The Prince of Darkness himself, Ozzy Osbourne. Although both personas share the same demographic traits, you simply would not market to them in the same way. One reason that personalization projects can fail is the over-reliance of personas and segmentation. Now, this may be a theoretical exercise, but unless you actually knew Ozzy and King Charles, how would you be able to tell the difference? We believe that the jobs to be done framework is a much more effective way to start your segmentation exercise. It's based on the concept that every user has a job to do on your site. Traditionally, most organizations split their target audience into segments on the basis of user and product characteristics. However, users have a different view. They just have a job to be done, which focuses on their end outcome. Take this example. Imagine that you're walking to a skateboard store. A weekly Tuesday affair, I'm sure. You wouldn't be looking to buy wheel bearings and hollow tracks, unless you're a skateboard fanatic, of course. Your job to be done is to get that awesome gift for a child and be named favourite parent or auntie or uncle at home. So, what job is your organisation being hired to do? Example jobs to be done categories include finding out more about the organisation to see if it's credible or a right fit, finding out more about a product or service they are interested in hiring to achieve a personal or professional objective, executing on a task, form fill, application submission, making a payment or a claim, contacting support or a specific person to solve a problem they are facing as quick as possible. So how do you figure out what your users' jobs to be done are? A simple way to find this out is just ask your users. Start with just 10 to 15 interviews or survey respondents. You'll find some quick trends and insights early on, and you can expand on that. Here are a few Kickstarter questions to consider. Tell me the main job or task you're looking to achieve on your site. Why is that important to you? How would you normally find information or service that you need on the site? Are there specific information gaps on the site that would improve your ability to get your main task or job done? If so, why is that important to you? Did you find the overall experience hard or easy? And how can that be improved? The questions should not lead the user and be open so you can get honest clarity about why your users visit your site and what content helps them to get their job done. We've drafted more questions to spark your inspiration in a detailed personalization guide, which we'll share with you following this webinar. So we've just covered how to define user segments based on their job to be done and other secondary factors. Let's move on to step 2, define personalization goals, specifically your organization's goals for personalization. Here are a few common ones you can take inspiration from: increase engagement, increase conversion, increase upsell value, and increase retention rate. As an example, if you're in higher education, increasing engagement might be linked to student happiness or success. If you're in government, you may be able to increase engagement by disseminating relevant information to your citizens. This could include council meetings, events, or services that they can see the value of the services being offered to you in your local area. Now you've defined what each user segment wants to achieve on your website, you can start mapping these to organisational outcomes linked to users' jobs. This ensures your mutual goals are aligned, and it makes it easy to define the metrics that mark progress or impact. Let's continue with the earlier examples of prospective undergraduate students' job to be done at your university. First, let's say an international student is keen to apply for an undergraduate programme at your institution. Your university's personalisation goal is to increase application conversions from an extremely relevant and efficient site experience. The metrics to measure results is admission form completion. In the second example, the local high school senior wants to see if your university is right for them through a campus tour. Your organisation goal for personalisation here is to increase engagement with your brand and compel them to register for an in-person tour as a way to recruit them. You measure results of your personalisation efforts by tracking the number of campus tour registrations completed on the site. As mentioned previously, our detailed personalisation guide has instructions on how to set up measurements in Google Analytics and all of the steps that we'll be going through today. Now, let's move on to step 3, mapping user journeys. When defining segments and goals, we tend to use journey mapping to work backwards from the user's job to be done. This allows you to work on how they currently get it done on your site and improve on it. Or it enables you to map a better user journey instead. Once you complete this, it helps you define the point at which it makes sense for you to set a trigger, where content personalization starts to add value to their job achievement versus being an unnecessary noise. Step 3 is where a lot of personalization projects fail. We attempt to create these extensive maps of every touch point, and it can quickly spiral out of control, becoming far too complicated. What then happens is that your teams can't translate it into practical actions, but it doesn't need to be overwhelming. A simple exercise is to map the journey on a whiteboard, worksheet, or even a sketch on paper. Do this before trying to complete complicated journey maps or templates that don't make sense to your organisation. As an example of how simple this can be, this is a student's journey on a university site that I did up in just a few minutes. In Visit 1, a prospective student arrives on a university's website looking to register for a campus tour. They accept the cookies on site and proceed to use the search bar to find a tour and date that suits them. They submit their campus tour registration, indicating their interest in an undergraduate programme for entry to the 2024-2025 cohort. In Visit 2, they return to the site a few days later to dive deeper. Based on their previous cookie-based visit, a range of undergraduate programs are displayed up top, encouraging the user to use the search bar for a specific program of interest. The user clicks electrical engineering as their degree of interest. The student is taken to the program page and engages with the video and text content there. In step 3, we mapped out our user journeys, and in step 4, we need to set a trigger to activate personalization where it makes sense. So, what's a trigger? It's a point of action taken in the user journey where you can start to control what content should be seen. Now that you've mapped out some priority user journeys, you can define the conditions of a trigger. Once these conditions are met, it should trigger the site content personalization for that user from that point. There are 2 types of personalization: anonymous and authenticated. The distinction between anonymous and authenticated hinges on personally identifiable information. Information that can be used to contact or locate an individual. This might include name, address, phone number, or an email address. Therefore, there are two types of personalization triggers you can use to personalize your web experience. The first is anonymous personalization triggers. This type of trigger allows you to personalize by user interest or interest inferred by behavior. It will trigger a personalized experience that tends to be channel specific, for example, website only, and will remain until the user clears their cookies. Examples of anonymous triggers are first-party cookie, where your website can store information about the user with their consent and remembers preferences for each visit until they clear their cookies. User-like location, where a user is located based on their IP address. Segmenting your users in this way makes sense if the location is a key factor influencing their expectations or behavior. Web event, specific actions taken on your website, including page visits or clicks, can trigger personalization. Device type, the device, as an example, mobile phone versus desktop, your users browse on to help you prioritize your web development efforts. For example, a university student using a mobile device is more likely to look for on-the-go information like campus map or library hours, rather than browse the library website to read a long research paper. Traffic source. The referring channel of a visit can help you determine what type of content you should serve to a user. For example, paid traffic is typically geared towards content that drives conversions. For example, purchasing a product or service. Self-identification. Give the users the option to select a profile type at the top of your website to automatically display relevant to that preference. For example, I am a student, a university staff, or an alumni. Search. Keywords are used on your site search bar to specify your area of interest that drives the rest of their content experience. This is an example of anonymous personalization using self-identification. Our customer here uses a self-identification widget. The widget helps guide the prospective applicants towards content based on their filtered preferences. For example, you'll see that they have selected a specific campus location and also chosen domestic high school student and undergraduate to identify their preferences. In this instant, the user would be able to see the undergraduate degree courses and related event or enrollment details based on these filters. Something I'm sure we've all had experience with is needing to find out what our waste collection day is. When we miss it, it's annoying, right? In this example from Horsham Council, it shows an unauthenticated personalisation action. The user is able to search for waste collection, select their location, and get the answer they need in a matter of seconds. The citizen is happy, and it's one less phone or email inquiry going through to the council service centre. When that user comes back to the site, as long as cookies are enabled, the council has the opportunity to promote events or surveys or any other services tailored to their postcode or zip code. Personalisation should reduce our inconvenience and allow us to just get back to our day. Another example is this multilingual site from Siena. It utilises self-identification of languages preferences. Siena is the world's biggest player in optical connectivity, and they use Squiz's DXP to govern and automate the process of translating and publishing content in different languages. Now, the second type of personalization is based on authenticated triggers. Authenticated triggers normally use user-specific data to personalize content. This type of personalization can work across channels. It's persistent versus cookie consent-based, tends to combine data sources, for example, CRM, CIS information, and can control access to restricted content. You can trigger personalization to the individual users through a login authentication, whether you need to integrate with an account via a single sign-on or a similar login feature. This is most secure way to personalize your content. In this example, CAI leverages their intranet to serve content and events based on their role and employment status of the user. The user needs to be logged in to benefit from this higher level of personalization. Gonzaga University in the States utilizes authenticated personalization in search when the user is logged in to the intranet versus the public site. This makes it the go-to platform to support retention in students. I'll dive deeper into a personalisation example with Griffith University, a top 2% university globally with over 4,000 staff and 50,000 students across 6 campuses. Their objectives for the Authenticated Student Portal project were communicate to different student cohorts in real time, fast, accessible on devices, a 360 view of student info in secure, easy-to-use interface, and to empower student self-service. To do this, they worked with us to integrate over 22 different systems and databases to offer a complete overview of students' information in one single place. To keep students engaged and informed about their university, using a notice board widget that displays relevant information to the student in a chronological order. News can be personalised based on the recipient. For example, a business student will see information about their faculty, relevant scholarships, business club activities, and more. A subtle unread notification button at the top indicates to the user that they have some news to catch up with. My schedule. To help ensure that students remain on top of their schedule and therefore are more likely to attend class or simply turn in their assignments, the My Schedule widget reminds users of the upcoming key dates. So that the schedule is not overwhelming to the user and to save valuable screen space on the portal homepage, the widget only shows the next 3 upcoming key dates. My Programme. Thanks to My Programme, students can track their degree progress and credit points to justify their grade for an internship or simply to know how they are tracking students' results. Results are presented in a clear and user-friendly manner. In My Programme, university displays a helpful progress bar to give a fair idea to the student of their progress so far, but also what's left to accomplish. For each course, students can also drill down individual assessments and grades. Students can also easily manage their course right from the portal, improving student experience and alleviating the administrative team from performing repetitive tasks. My Finances. Payment tasks are still manual in many universities. Students need to visit their student administration in person to pay their fees or even to know how much they still owe. With My Finances, university students can see all the times the total amount due and payment deadlines, but also pay within the portal. The results, 1 week after launch, 52.6% of polled students rated the new portal excellent despite having to adjust to a new student experience mid-semester. In the first year, My Griffith ranked up 500,000 sessions per month, making it one of the university's most highly visited sites. We've completed steps 1 through 4. In step 5, we'll have enough information to start considering what types of content we should personalise as a priority. This visual shows just some possible examples of content that can be personalised on a website. The examples I went through earlier also demonstrate the variety of options available. You might be thinking, wow, there's a lot of things I need to personalise, but you don't have to do all of them at the same time. Think about one job to be done your users really care about time and time again. Focus on that first. Do it well and progress to other areas. It's better to have one successful component in market than a lot of initiatives that take too long to launch simultaneously. There are explanations for each of these content types available in our personalisation guide, which we'll share with you after this webinar. So we've covered steps 1 to 5. Let's dive into step 6 very quickly. Measure results. A common tool to measure personalisation efforts across your website is Google Analytics 4. In this example, first, define each of your user segments under audiences within admin panels. You can make pre-made GA4 audiences or create a custom audience. For each segment, you'll need to carefully select what criteria Google Analytics 4 should use to identify its users, including source, page visit, and event. Back in the Google Analytics 4 main panel, you go to reports and then engagement. You can then measure each Use a segment against a set of selected metrics such as conversions, engagement, or whatever you decide to measure your personalization success against. We have covered every step, including screenshots, in this guide we can share with you following this webinar. So in summary, do and measure what's right for your institution. There are a myriad of other engagement and tracking tools that can be used, or you can simply bring all that we've covered today in this template, which is accessible from the personalization guide. Do and measure what's right for your business, and remember not to be creepy. So to recap, focus on 1 to 2 group user segments to map journeys for, 1 to 2 personalization triggers relevant to the most important jobs to be done for those segments, 2 to 3 content items to personalize per segment, and 2 to 3 key measures of success. Start with something small. Do it quickly to learn. Iterate and show results to earn the right to expand your scope. I hope you've got a good overview of the 6 steps you can take to get ready for website personalization projects and how you can approach it in bite-sized chunks. I'm sure you have some questions. My colleagues, Julie and Lucy, have been waiting in the wings to join me for some questions and answers. To ask a question, just drop them into the right-hand side of your screen. Welcome, Lucy and Julie.
Thank you, everyone. Hello. Thank you for joining us today. We've got quite a lot of questions, which is fantastic. I'll kick us off just to make sure that we're able to finish on time and get everyone back to their day. The first one I think is actually for you, Lucy. Is there an optimum number of user segments we should be creating for personalization? How many is too many?
I would really say that there isn't the perfect place, to be honest. In UX, we often use the phrase, it depends, and it's really true. But I would really encourage anyone who's looking at starting to do segments, start small. As was in the presentation, don't rely on demographic data. Really think about what are those key things that people are trying to do and who are the people who are trying to do them. Start small, test it, get it out there, see what happens. And then learn from it. That's the really important thing, is don't just put it out there and leave it. Really learn from it, and then you can build on that. And also, doing segments isn't a one-time thing. You can't just do them and leave them and they're perfect forever. Your audiences will change. What you want to achieve will change. So please do keep revisiting them, tweaking, improving them, and, keeping up with understanding that data and helping you build from there.
You mentioned the data piece there. Our next question, I think this might be for you, Julie. Lucy, if you've got anything to add, please do. Are there any privacy concerns associated with web personalization? We hear that question come up quite a lot.
Yeah, so the short answer is absolutely yes. So web personalization really relies on extensive data collection and then using that data to personalize a web or digital experience in some way. So you really need to make sure that if you're planning on doing this, you've got a really good focus on user consent for the collection of that data. You need to make sure you have very clear privacy policies that your users can read and understand, and also make sure that your security measures are up to date to make sure that you're compliant with any kind of privacy regulations and best practices. So a simpler way of doing that is implementing some technology like a customer data platform or a CDP, which focuses on that first party data, which is always collected with the customer's consent, and it manages that consent for you. So that gives you a lot more control over your customer data rather than relying on those third-party cookies that we have maybe used in the past where someone else stores and manages that data. Another thing to think of is that third-party data. You might have heard of the cookie apocalypse. So that third-party data is actually getting phased out. Many organizations have done this already. So Google Chrome is one of the last to block or restrict those third-party cookies. But that means you won't be able to rely on those. So you really need to be able to focus on that first-party data and then the collection of that. And you need to make sure that all your privacy and data governance is set up before you start doing that.
Hey, thanks so much for that, Julie. it leads into, like, how do we enable a personalized experience across multiple digital channels, websites, apps, email, etc. Julia, I think that one's best for you. Again, Lucy, if there's anything that you want to add, please do.
Yeah, so mapping a user across multiple different channels can be challenging, but there are a couple of different methods that you can use to establish that connection. The easiest approach is through building an authenticated pool, which you were talking about earlier, MC. So those logged in experiences, which makes it really easy to understand exactly who your user is and make that kind of hyper-personalized, almost individualized experience for them. It's also really easy to do reach out campaigns for those users through emails and notifications. Outside of a logged in experience, there are persistent identifiers like cookies or mobile device IDs that can be used to recognize users across different devices, as well as being able to match email addresses if they've filled in a form, for example, or phone numbers provided by users that can establish that link between, for example, a mobile site and the web version of it. There are also third-party services that you can use that specialize in cross-device tracking. But the real key thing is, again, I'm going to keep harping on this one, around that privacy and consent management. So they're really essential when implementing those methods. I think, as you summarized at the end, don't be creepy. So when you're mapping those users across devices, it's not foolproof, but there are a lot of techniques that you can use to really enhance your personalization. But it is sometimes worth doing those analysis about what the customer outcome is and the return on investment would be, and making sure that there's a really good case for doing something like this, or if the customer outcome might not be worth it.
Yeah, and just to kind of build on what Julie said there about not being creepy with this, users don't like it when they feel tracked. Given the experiences, a lot of stuff in the news about data tracking and things in the past, it's much more on people's minds than it has been maybe in the earlier days. So that feeling of, oh, I've just been looking at that and now it's telling me this. How did it know? Is something that you just need to factor into that experience as well.
Thanks for that, Julie and Lucy. One of the questions that we've got, I think this one will be best for Lucy, is it comes from Andrea. What we really want to do personalization, and I think this question's perfect for this webinar. But we've had bad experiences with other systems in the past. I know that I have previously. What can we do now?
To be honest, that's such a common story. Like, I came out of a digital comms background as well. We've all had that experience. And it was often, as you said in the presentation earlier, we all tried to do the big bang. We tried to do it all at once. The technical setup wasn't quite there. We didn't have enough capacity to actually serve us all the content that was needed. And that's why I would say the biggest difference within the past is now the recommendation is to start small. And I would really say, this is a word that I like to throw in a lot with digital work generally, is be realistic about what you can manage. So start small. Start with something that's really key for you as well and that you can measure reasonably straightforwardly. Start from there. And then build up. You really don't need to do everything at once, and start with that targeted piece. So the two words I would always use with making sure that your personalization experience will not be the terrible one of the past is realism. Be realistic about what you can take on. If you're a really small team, particularly focus in on that one key thing and take it from there. And also think about how it will be sustainable. So what are you going to need to keep that personalization fresh? Keep an eye on those segments, all of those kind of things. Build that into your planning at the beginning, and it should help you to have a much better experience this time. And awesome platforms like Squiz as well. They really help.
Just leading on from that question, though, you've mentioned how do we address it, like the actual project. But one thing that sometimes can get forgotten, but be one of the most important things, and whenever we're speaking to our colleagues, is what we get asked about. How do you measure? And this one I think is for Lucy. How do you measure if personalization has actually been successful?
I'm going to go back to my UX touch point of it depends, because it really depends on your organization and what is important to you. And as I said, in that process of setting up the personalization, thinking about the jobs to be done, part of that is actually setting the goals for that piece of personalization. So what is the thing you're trying to achieve with it? Because that will really help you set what success looks like. And then you can have a think about what kind of things are easily available to you in terms of measurement. So we often go back to Google Analytics and other analytics platforms, which is really great for things like, as we had the example of university, looking at those conversion rates. So looking at how people are moving through the site. Are they doing the thing that you want to do? But there can also be wider things. So bin collections. Close to almost all of our hearts is a good bin collection. And that is something that you'll see the conversion rates, which is awesome. But you also can look at things like calls. If you're a council and you've traditionally got a lot of calls about bin collection, keep in touch with your contact center and see if you can get analytics on, has that number of calls about when bins are being collected or complaints from people because they didn't know when bin day was and their bins didn't get collected, is that number changing? And also, are you getting more questions actually about what information is available online? So those are things that beyond the world that we're often with of Google Analytics, to look at in terms of measuring success. And I apologize that my assistant has wandered through the back. She did get firmly told in advance that she wasn't to be part of the webinar. And I'm going to end my answer there while I quickly remove her.
Thanks for that. Julie, we have a question that's come in. We know it's really topical right now. We get asked these types of questions all the time. How can machine learning and artificial intelligence be used in web personalization?
Yeah, so above and beyond those, standard recommendations related to content that can be generated in real time, there are some other ways that AI can be used in web personalization now. One really key one is content customization. So that's when you leverage AI techniques like natural language processing to analyze and understand user preferences for how they want to consume content. So they tend to like watching videos, then serve up your content as a short generated video with the voiceover language of their choice. Does a different type of user tend to like reading information, but they only read the first kind of 100, 150 words? Then give them that short, punchy summary of the content. It's really around personalizing it and tailoring the content for the user's individual needs and preferences and how they would learn and understand better. Predictive analytics is another way to use AI. So it utilizes historical data to make predictions about user behavior, like the likelihood of a citizen making a complaint, maybe about bin day, or the likelihood of a student to leave university, for example. So these predictions can be used to personalize their digital experiences and adjust the content to offer them really personalized help before they reach that critical point of complaining or leaving. So it really helps them you identify them really early, and you can address their concerns as early as possible so they don't get to that critical point.
So thank you so much for that, Julie. We've got a question coming from Bernie. How do we get around cache content versus personalize? Is there a performance trade-off?
There is, essentially. So there's a couple of different things you can do. One key one is looking at still having cache, but because you might be using segments or personas, then you can have user segmented cache, where if the user is part of a particular segment, then they get presented with the cache content that's specifically relevant just for that segment. So if you're using those segmented or persona-based personalization, it's really easy to do segmented cache, so you don't have to worry as much around the performance issues. For something like a logged-in experience where you're getting a very hyper-personalized experience, it can be a bit harder. So you can still cache that content, so when they're returning They don't have, they still have the nice performance that you want, but it's really around balancing it. So yes, there is a balancing act, but there are definitely things you could do to make sure that your end users get the performance that they expect from websites these days, even if you're serving a personalized experience.
Thanks for that, Julie. You touched upon it in one of your answers earlier about customer data platforms. So one of the questions that we've had come through is that I've heard you need a customer data platform to implement personalization. Can it be done without one? What are the benefits if you do use one?
Yeah, so it's not strictly necessary to use a customer data platform to implement personalization, but it does tend to streamline the process a lot. So a customer data platform, or a CDP, it's a centralized system that collects, integrates, and manages customer data from lots of different sources. So you might have your customer data served in a couple of different places, and it creates that unified customer profile that can be then used for personalization and any other targeted marketing efforts. So while you can do personalization without a CDP using other methods, even a CRM or something like that could be used, or any other marketing automation platforms, the real benefits of a CDP is around that data consolidation, that unified customer profile, and then being able to do personalization based on those. So you can create segments, or you can do that individual logged in personalization as well. It really simplifies the process. Most of them also manage the consent management that's so important for first-party data collection, and it makes you a lot more efficient and effective when you're driving those improved customer experiences and outcomes that you're trying to get from personalization.
The next question that's just come through, most of it you've already answered, Julie, but I'll explain it in full. What if I have my own customer data platform or CRM that already has some segmentation capability already? If you're a Squiz customer, do you need to use Squiz's CDP?
No. So the Squiz DXP is a composable DXP, which means that you can use the parts of it that you want to use. So if you already have an existing CDP that you've bought, like a third-party tool, and you want to use that to do personalization, it's really easy for you to use that with all of the rest of the Squiz DXP. Alternatively, if you have multiple CMSs, so you might have the Squiz CMS and a couple of other ones as well that are used around your organization, or even just one CMS that's not ours, you can still use the Squiz CDP to do personalization on that CMS. Because we're a very composable DXP, we make it really easy for you to use the parts of us that you need to use, and then use the rest of the technology in ones that you've historically used already that you're really happy with.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Julie. Thank you so much, Lucy. We're coming to the end of time, and I don't want to hold up anyone. I'm sure everyone's got meetings and lunch and various things after this, or dinner. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you to everyone out there who's watching this webinar. I just want to say to you guys, check out our personalization guides. It's all coming days. A data webinar in September, and we'll come out to you with an invite. You can actually sign up for our latest newsletter, and if you want to reach out or know more, please speak to your account manager, or alternatively you can send us an email at ask@squiz.net, and one of our team will be with you shortly. Thank you everyone for joining us today, and we hope that you got all your questions answered and learn about what you could start with personalization, so that you can actually get going on it when you go back to your desks. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone.